Greetings. I am going to talk to you a little bit about the Ohio Prevention Credential and how you fill out that education grid specifically. If you know nothing about the prevention credentials, you might want to go watch some other videos that I've put out about the actual overview. But this is specifically about filling out that education grid. Again, my name is Jennifer Benson, and I am working with the Ohio Coaches and Mentors Network. We are helping people around the state get their credentials, um, increase their capacity, and basically just trying to improve the profession of prevention in the state of Ohio. So, what we're going to do is hopefully you will gain a better understanding of what the education grid is and how you use it. You'll be able to organize those trainings and certificates so that you can put them into the grid. And then also, you're going to be prepared to be able to enter them into the grid. So, just a quick reminder for the OCPSA, OCPS, and OCPC, all of those credentials. And if you don't know what those are, go back and watch a different video. But they are all going to use a grid. Now, the OCPSA grid is slightly different than the S and the C, but they both have the exact same um, structure to them. So the only differences will be the number of minimum hours. So both of these grids are used to organize all that education that you have so that we know which content area each education piece goes into. Some of them can be split. Some of them can, maybe be used a little bit here, a little bit there, but they're all going to be put into those content areas. And when you look at the grid, and I'll show you a grid here in just a second, it's going to show the minimum number of hours required in each content area. Now, I've had some people who say, well, I got the minimum and everything, but you have to make sure that you've got the minimum overall, because if you just get the minimum in each one of those areas, you're not going to get all the way to what the minimum overall is. So make sure that obviously get those minimums in each content area, but you're going to need more in some of those to get to that total number. When you are filling it out, make sure that you put that full title of the course, the date, and the number of hours. So let's delve it a little bit more with the grid. When you go onto the Ohio Chemical Dependency Professionals Board site, you'll scroll down a little bit and you'll find this section right here. This is the place where you'll find the grid for the OCPSA. So you'd want to download that grid and go ahead and download those education definitions underneath it. If you're looking for the OCPS or the OCPC, you have to scroll way down to the bottom and you will see those there. So again, download that grid and those definitions. So I'm just going to show you what the OCPS, OCPC grid looks like. It might, when you get the A, the only difference is going to be these minimum hours, and I'll show you some of those places that it's different. So it's a 4-page document. This is the first page. Kind of gives you a basic overall idea of what you're going to be doing. For the OCPC and the OCPS, it is 120 hours. You'll see on that first line, 120 hours of university, college coursework, or continuing education training. And once the minimum number of required hours has been set, you can put as many you need in any of the other ones. For the OCPS, OCPC, you need 24 hours of AOD specific. We are working on finding out what those actual definition of primary prevention specific are, but it's basically things like here's a course in vaping prevention, or here's a course in marijuana prevention, or here's a course in life skills that is a evidence-based prevention program. So that you'll have to make sure you've got that. The next bold part here says 50% of the 120 hours must be completed within the 5 years immediately prior to filing. Now, what that means, so let's say it's 120 hours. So 50% of them need to be current within the last 5 years. But the other side of that is that 50% of them can be 100 years ago. Maybe not really, but can be much further ago. Because I've had a lot of people who say, well, I went to college 10 years ago. I can't use any of that training. Yes, you can. You can use up to 60 hours from more than 5 years ago. All of it has to have a certificate, though. So if you don't have a certificate, if you don't have a transcript, then it's not going to count. So that's the first page. So let's look at the actual grid itself. Here's the first page of the grid. And it's got sections on the left for each of the content areas. And as you look at them, you'll see where it says like 3 hours required. That's that minimum. You can go up to 20, 30, 40 hours, but you have to have a minimum of 3 in each one of those. And as you go across, you see what the date is, the name, and the number of hours. It does show you, they've got a certain number of slots in each one of these, but if you need to do extra lines, just do an extra grid. That's the third page of the grid. This one just goes over the community organization, public policy, and professional growth. And then the last page is the ethics and cultural competency. So that's what the grid is. So let's talk about, now that we've kind of downloaded that grid, downloaded the education definitions, now we got to get all those certificates and organize them. You have to have documentation. You can't say, well, I know I took a course in, vaping prevention, but I don't know that they ever gave us a certificate. Sorry, you can't use that. You got to have documentation. And that documentation needs to include the name of the training, the date of the training, the total hours. I know so many places don't put that on there, and you got to have that on there. And then the sponsoring agency or trainer name. So, whether it's through Prevention Action Alliance, Prevention First, or whether it says, Nicole Schisler or Christy Valentini Lackner, whoever the trainer is, one of those things has to be on there. Each certificate must have your full name on it. I know that they're not supposed to, but some places still give out blank certificates where you're expected to put your name on it. Please do that, because you cannot turn in a blank one to the board. Now, if you have changed your name, maybe you either got married, got divorced, whatever reason, make sure that you send documentation, because if you've got some certificates from before the name change and some from after, they're going to question you on that. So make sure you have some kind of documentation for that. And I'm going to show you how to do this, but you're going to check for, and there's one of those lovely acronyms we love in prevention, the Ohio Chemical Dependency Professional Board approved hours. And then again, make sure you've got enough of that alcohol and other drug primary prevention specific content. For the OCPSA, it's 9 hours. And for the S and the C, it's 24. Then you're going to just organize them. You saw all those 8 different content areas. You're going to organize them into the content areas. So when you're looking at your certificates, you're going to see some words and numbers and all this at the bottom. Usually, sometimes it's at the top, but it's usually near the bottom. What you're looking for is something that'll say P and then a number. So if you look at the top left, it says P2, Prevention, Education, and Service Delivery 10.75. That means that was approved for the P2 content area, which is called Prevention, Education, and Service Delivery. And it was approved for 10.75 hours. If you look at the one on the top right, you'll see it says 1.5 for P2 1.5. So 1.5 hours in that P2 content area. The bottom middle, it says P7, Ethics and Prevention, and that's a 6 for 6 hours. Now you might also see on these that they have a thing where it says R1. Those for people who need to renew. So if you're renewing, that would show you that it is available for renewals. Some certificates, be wary, because if it just says R1 and there's no P something on there, then it cannot be used for an initial certification, only for the renewal. So it's really important to look at these numbers. So then everybody has a different way of doing this. You figure out what works best. But some people put them in piles. Maybe they'll get, their dining room table emptied and put them into different piles with the 8 different content areas. Maybe you've got file folders and you've got one for each content area and you put your certificates in that way. Maybe you've got everything digitally and you want to put it in in digital folders on your computer. Whatever works, but it really will help you to organize your certificates that way. The other thing we're going to look at is if you have any college classes. It's a college degree is not required for an OCPSA, but for an OCPS, you must have at least an AA, and for a C, you must have at least a BA or BS. So, you may or may not have college classes depending on what you're doing, but if you do have them, go ahead and, start off with that unofficial transcript so that you can kind of just figure out what classes you have there, because some of them can be used. If you've got any of the syllabi, that really helps you because a class may be called something and you covered child development in that class, but it does not say that in the title. If you have the syllabus, you can prove your point with that. So once you get all those certificates in the different content areas, then you can say, oh, you know what? I don't have anything in P4. So you can start looking at your grid and say, I need something there. You can then look at your college classes and see if you have something there that you can add to it. If that class was a semester class, you take the number of credit hours and multiply them by 15, because that's the number of hours a week in a semester. So 3 credit hour class times 15 is 45 content hours. If it's a quarter class, that's typically 10 weeks. So if it's like a 4-hour credit hour class times 10 is 40 content hours. So you can see those can add up really quickly. For the degree, for the date that you'll put on the grid, you're going to use the date of the degree. But what if you get a certificate and it does not have an approval code? If it's not specifically approved to the OCDPB, you may still be able to use it. So that's where you're going to pull out that page of definitions, education content area definitions. And you're going to look there and you're going to see, having looked at your course, the certificate that you have, hopefully maybe you have an agenda or objectives or a syllabus, and you're going to say, where would this fit? Which one of these content areas does it best fit in? I'm going to tell you right now, if that training has anything like treatment, recovery, counseling, diagnosis, relapse prevention, those are not going to count for prevention hours. You can try, but I'll tell you right now, it's probably not going to count. So don't even worry about anything that has those. So let's start putting that education into the content areas. And I just pulled one here. This is the last page. It's got P6, P7, P8 on it here. So you'll see we've got the date of the course. You've got the course name, and then the number of hours all the way down there. So on this one, you'll see that P7, which only has 3 hours required, this is for an OCPSA, we've got the ethics and prevention 6 hours, so that content area is full. You can put more in it, but it's got the minimum that it needs. Also for the cultural competency area, you only need 3 hours. You've got 6 there, so it's good to go. If you look up at P6 for the OCPSA, you need 15 hours there. So we've only got 9.5. So we'll need to put some more hours in there. Right now, the first time, I usually print out 2 or 3 copies of the grid. First time, you're just going to put everything on. We'll worry about organizing it and getting it in the right order later. But first, just put everything on that grid. My English teacher used to call it a sloppy copy and then a neat sheet. So we're going to start with that sloppy copy. Just put it on the grid just to see where it all is and what you might need. So this is just an example of one of the content area definition sheets. So for P1, this is what the definition looks like. Just wanted to kind of show you, let's say you've got a college class that was all about data interpretation. So you can look at this section, look down and go, there's a whole line there that says collecting, organizing, and interpreting data. So I would bet that that college course would count under planning and evaluation. So that's how you kind of will figure that out. Again, there's 8 different sections, so you have to go through all the different content areas to figure out where yours might go. But definitely use this whenever you're looking for where a content area will go if it doesn't have a specific P1, P2 designation. So we've got our sloppy copies done. We've got all of our trainings on the grid. We finally got enough in each content area, so we're all good to go there. We've checked it, made sure that at least half of the hours are within the last 5 years or 2 years, depending on the degree or the credential you're going for. And we've also checked to make sure that we have the right amount of alcohol and drug prevention content. That's when you now get your neat sheet out and start putting them in chronological order. That's the wording they use on the board site. They don't say which chronological order, but I usually go from the oldest at the top to the most recent near the bottom. So within each content area. So in P1, that first line up there, you want it to be the oldest training all the way down to the newest training. Make sure that everything that you put on the grid is going to be also included in that digital file because you have to upload all those certificates. So make sure that you've got them all listed both in your pile of certificates and on the grid. So again, double check that you've got that right amount of AOD content. And then when you're finished with that grid, put your name at the top and you're going to have to upload it. So when you upload it, I also suggest that you make the name of the file your name. So I usually name it like I'll put Jennifer or put Benson, Jennifer education grid. Or when I get all my certificates uploaded into one file, I'll name it Benson, Jennifer certificates. That way, if in some cyber craziness it gets misplaced, it'll be easy for them to match them together. So you've got everything on your neat sheet. You are ready. You go back into e-license where you applied for your RA, and you're going to click apply for a new license. It's going to have all those questions that come up again, all the demographic questions. Basically, a lot of it you have already filled out. You're just going through and confirming everything. Then you'll get to a section that'll say upload completed education grid here, upload certificates here. That's where you're going to upload those documents. The supervisor piece is now online, so you're going to want to make sure that your supervisor completes that. They will sign into their e-license account. There is some directions on how to do that on the board site as well. And once you got it all in and you have hit submit, you basically just wait until you get a response back from the board. Now, do not freak out if you get something back that says you need to fix something. Doesn't mean that you are completely unapproved and you'll never get approved. I would say 75% of the people I've worked with have had it sent back for something. Sometimes it's something as simple as this needs to go into this content area, not that one. Or I added it up and you need one more hour here. Or your name on this form is spelled incorrectly. Whatever. Just make sure that you do it, fix it, send it back. You don't want to let it sit around for too long. So hopefully that gave you a little help on how to do that. gave you a better understanding of what the grid is and how it's used. Hopefully you can figure out now how to organize your trainings and fit them into the grid better. The more we've got a lot of people sending stuff to the board right now, but the more organized and better looking our applications are, the better for the board. So we want to make them as easy and as concise and as organized as possible. If you have a question, if you get confused with a step, first of all, don't feel bad because everyone does. But please reach out. This is one of the pieces of my job that I think is we'll just say the funnest, the best part. I love helping people put the grid on it. For me, it's kind of like a logic puzzle. So I love doing this. So don't feel bad if you need help with it. Please reach out to me and we will get you your certificates and we will get you your grid and we will get you your credentials. So good luck. Thanks for listening. And I will hopefully see your name at the next credentialed online party.